All right, welcome back to Lessons from Billionaires. This particular lesson that I was taught comes from Richard Branson, all right? He's a multi-billionaire. He's a very well-known entrepreneur. If you don't know who he is, maybe you haven't been on the internet for a while. You've probably been living under a rock. But Richard Branson, Sir Richard Branson, okay, he's been knighted. And I've met Sir Richard Branson. I met him at a hangar party here in Brisbane, Australia. Heard him speak. And I've read his books, and I love his journey, and I know I've learned a lot about him through his writings and his escapades. I suppose you could say his adventures. He's a very adventurous entrepreneur. One of the things I've actually learned two major lessons from Sir Richard Branson. He's a wonderful human being, but he's also obviously a very clever entrepreneur. So the first lesson I learned from Sir Richard Branson was, if you don't know how to do it, say yes and then work it out. Okay? If you don't know how to do it, say yes and work it out. Okay? If you got a notepad and pen, then you can go and write that down. Now, when I first implemented this, what happened was I was washing this guy's cars. In my teens, I was washing cars to make extra money, and he had a Mercedes, he was a pretty well-to-do guy, a nice house, and I remember he was quite a heavy smoker, because I used to always clean out a lot of cigarettes from his car. Anyway, that's off topic, but I knew he was making a lot of money. Now, one time I went to the casino with a friend, and he said, look, my dad can get us into the high rollers area, let's go have a look. So I walk in the high rollers area of the casino, and here's my client whose car I wash. He's in the high rollers bar, or in the high rollers room at the casino. So his name was John, and I went up to him and said, hey John, how you going? Good to see you, be confident, talk to him, shake his hand. And he was shocked to see me in the high rollers room, but he said, listen, you do such a great job of the car, you do such a good job cleaning my Mercedes, that I want to give you more work. Okay, so I was like, that's great, awesome. And so I said, well, what is it you want me to do? He said, well, I'd love you to clean my pool, and I'd love you to do my gardens, mow my lawns, tend to the trees. I'm like, perfect, will you do it? And I said, yes, because Richard Branson taught me to say yes and then work it out. Now listen, I had no flipping idea how to clean a pool. I had no idea how to do gardens. I had no clue, but I knew from Richard Branson that I had to say yes and work it out, okay? Now what's really fascinating is when I did that, his pool turned green, and I killed his plants. Now, not a fun end to the story, but I learned some lessons. Okay, eventually I learned how to clean the pool, and I learned how to do gardens. But also a lesson from him, he said, Lloyd, if you didn't know how to do it, it's great you said yes, but you could have also asked for help. And so I learned some lessons on the way because I said yes. If I just had said no and not done it, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn those lessons from John. Okay, so hook or by crook, whether you go and do it and you fail at it like I did miserably, or you succeed, you'll always learn. So that's why it's important to say yes, then figure it out after. Okay, so that's the first lesson I learned from Sir Richard Branson I've implemented. Now, I've implemented that lesson, by the way, in my entire life, and I've been able to actually succeed by doing that. I built $1 million network marketing business by saying yes and working it out later, okay? I've written books by saying yes and working it out later. I've launched a podcast by saying yes and work it out later. Even this YouTube channel, let's start one, let's work it out. Let's figure it out on the way, okay? Lots of stuff like that. Careers like that. I remember in my career, I got this job in construction. I'd never had a day in construction in my life. I was working on the 6th largest project in the world, Yas Island in Abu Dhabi. You can Google it. And I remember I was in my early 20s, I got this gig to go onto the island and work in development on the Formula One track. And I'm sitting in this car going across the bridge onto the island thinking, oh my God, I had imposter syndrome. I'm like, how am I gonna I have no idea what I'm doing. Because I said yes to an opportunity and I was gonna work it out. And it worked out, all right? So that's the first lesson. The second lesson from Sir Richard Branson that I learned was this. You don't have to do everything. In fact, it's probably best if you don't. What do I mean by that? Well, Sir Richard Branson doesn't know how to do everything in his businesses. What he does is he collects great, smart people around him who execute their special service or their special talents into bringing his project to life, okay? So he surrounds himself with smart people who can buy into his vision. So when I've ever had success in business, I haven't gone alone. I've always done it with a team. People who are better at stuff than I am, okay? So it's about actually being strategically incompetent at certain things. So you're not always the best at it, okay? Getting better people around you for certain things that you can't do, that you shouldn't do, that you don't want to do. And that's what Sir Richard Branson's so good at. That's why he's been able to scale his wealth the way he has. He's a serial entrepreneur because he doesn't actually do the how, he finds the who. All right, so they're the two main lessons I've learned from Sir Richard Branson. If you've enjoyed those, I want you to go and implement those lessons yourself, okay? And if you have, and you've got a story to tell about it, I'd love to hear how those lessons went for you. Leave me a comment or a question in the comments below, And of course, hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this series of Lessons from Billionaires, and I'll see you on the next episode.